be concerns if HAL is going to open the door, but will artificial intelligence help donors open their generosity? I'm Bill Stanczykiewicz. This is the first day from the fundraising school, and I'm joined today by Dr. Karen Boyd. She's the Director of Research of the Policy and Innovation Center, and she is gaining expertise on artificial intelligence and fundraising. And Karen, thanks for being willing to share that expertise with us here on the Fundraising Schools podcast.
I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
The reference, of course, to 2001: A Space Odyssey, when Dave wants Hal to open the door and Hal says, nope, I'm not going to do it. There's all these questions, Karen, about artificial intelligence and fundraising. What have you been discovering that fundraisers need to know?
Well, there's a lot out there, and one of the difficult things is it changes so quickly. Just a couple of years ago, we were all focused on self-driving cars, and then all of a sudden these large language models come up, and they've improved dramatically quickly. I know it's these days it feels like 2020 was a long time ago, but it's really incredible, the speed of progress, which means the speed of change. It's really hard to keep up with.
Well, Karen, you mentioned the self-driving car. We're not expecting AI to have people become, self-giving donors all of a sudden. There's still a role for fundraisers here. What are some of the themes that you're seeing, some of the common aspects of artificial intelligence? Again, changing by the moment. But what are some of those big picture things that you've been seeing as you've been paying close attention to this very important topic?
One thing that's really difficult, I think, for people in all fields to really grapple with is that these tools really seem like they're making their own decisions. They're coming up with something totally new. It's very easy to treat them like an oracle. And this is, I think, in part advanced by the fact that we call them artificial intelligence, right? We say that they're thinking, we talk about them as if they're human minds, but it's important to remember that they're not, that they're developed out of data that came out of the real world, right? Data that is informed by humans, by society, and that includes the biases that exist in that society. It includes assumptions about, in the case of fundraising, maybe who can give and how much can they give and how should we talk to people who give, and doesn't leave a lot of opportunity for sort of true innovation. That human beings have to bring that creative thinking into the prospect, or into the human beings have to bring that kind of thinking into their communication and their work. Cathy O'Neil, who wrote the very accessible and excellent book that I recommend called Weapons of Math Destruction, talks about moral imagination as one of the things that we have that these machines do not have. So we might think a good example is resumes, that if I might think, you know what, actually, we should be thinking about hiring more women at a large tech company. But if I train my model on all of the people we've hired before, and in the past we've hired mostly men, we'll find that that algorithm is going to throw out people who say that they were in women's volleyball instead of men's volleyball. And in fact, we saw that happen. And that was eventually identified, and they had to scrap that algorithm, but that went on for a long time, that this algorithm is just reproducing the patterns it's seen before. And so it's not, I wouldn't say it's wrong to use them. It would be basically impossible not to at this point. They're baked into Google search, baked into your word processor, your graphic design, your code libraries, your car, your camera. They're everywhere. You can't not use them. But being aware that they're there and where they fall short, I think, is really crucial to doing a good job.
Karen, you mentioned the moral imagination, and this is somewhat more of a philosophical question than a practical how-to question. The opening textbook that is read by our master's students at the Indiana University Lilly Family School of Philanthropy is Understanding Philanthropy, written by our founder, Robert Payton, alongside Dr. Michael Moody. Michael's still on our faculty to this day. And one of the things they talk about philanthropy is how it's an expression of our, wait for it, moral imagination.
Really?
Yes. How about that? And so now that we see this phrase being used both in technology and in philanthropy, how are you seeing these two worlds coming together?
I think that's a really fantastic question, and such a fun coincidence that these folks both have used the same phrase. I think that really speaks to what we see as our role in the world, our sort of what makes us as humans special, and sort of what we can do going forward. I'm personally really worried about de-skilling and replacement of jobs because of these technologies. And I think the phrase moral imagination really highlights where and how we can not only contribute something the machines can't contribute, but find a sort of find a niche where we can continue to be like feel rewarded and sort of structured in our lives if we don't have as much or the same kind of traditional work that we currently have. And similarly, I think that's how people, especially if you've got some disposable money laying around, I think that's one way that people can feel like they're having the kind of impact they want to have on the world is by exercising that moral imagination and deciding, making that sort of autonomous decision about where they want that impact to be.
Let me try this observation in response that the work that we've always done, technology throughout human history, automation, does the mechanical things. We now can grow more agricultural product on less land because of agricultural technology. Mm-hmm. The assembly line, which made things go even faster, right, to put things together. And now in manufacturing, we can make more things with fewer people because of automation. When we think about fundraising, is AI automating some things, taking some of those, manual tasks, and therefore freeing fundraisers up to spend more time tapping into and understanding the moral imagination of the donor? I'm just speculating here, but I'm curious what you think that, if AI is doing some of those kind of rote functions, is that allowing fundraisers to spend more time with people?
That is a really interesting question. I do think there are we're so early on in this process, and there are a lot of ways that this could go. This could automate large portions of a job and make a job less skilled, or it could really augment people and allow them to do more work or focus on the parts of work that they like or are really good at. I like the idea of allowing that for that human connection to be the main focus of people's daily work lives. I personally don't love writing emails. I don't know a lot of people who do. So I love the idea of something else taking that off of my plate so that I can connect with people. And I think that strikes me in philanthropy as something that could really be helpful.
When we look at the work of fundraisers, some of the things that could be automated, maybe that first draft of a grant proposal, first draft of a thank you letter, first draft of a solicitation letter are some of the things that AI maybe is doing or could do. Karen, how much sophistication does a fundraiser need? Can I just use the free models in AI? Do I need a subscription? I'm hearing these things that unless you use it a lot, it's really not that helpful because, as you mentioned earlier, it's what you're feeding in is also what you're getting out of these large language models. Mm-hmm. What do fundraisers need to know? What level of entry point do they need to be aware of?
That's a great question. I think that there's some usefulness of the free models. One thing to think about is to be aware of the terms of service of the specific model that you're looking at. There are a few things that are relatively low lift skill building things we can do to make these, especially these large language models, really useful for us. So you can just jump in there and start asking it questions, and you'll learn a lot from what you get back. Don't be afraid to ask a bunch of times, right? You can literally just refresh, right? See, hey, give me 10 examples, or you can just try again. Tweak your prompt and try again. This is all going to get you pretty far into learning sort of what to expect and how to really leverage it. But as for some tips for those prompts, I would recommend being very specific. So if you've got someone, details about someone you want to write an email to, you can put all of that in there. You can channel someone, as they say. So pretend that you tell the AI directly, pretend that you are an excellent grant writer with an equity focus. Respond to this prompt with these details about your project. All of that specificity is going to go a long way toward getting you an answer that's really helpful. You can bring in collateral. So like I said, the grant prompts or the other stuff that you have about the project that you want to do. You can start, I recommend starting, if it's going into a weird direction, if you're like, I don't know how we got here, but this is not what I'm looking for, rather than saying, hey, that's not what I'm looking for, can you tweak this? If you've gone too far astray, start a new chat, because it saves all of that context and is sort of like, it's gone off into a rabbit trail. And it's like you can just start over like a video game at the top if you start a new chat oftentimes with these things. Get familiar with the strengths and weaknesses of the specific model that you're using. For example, ChatGPT versus Claude, just spend a little time Googling that. That'll help you understand, one, which one to pick, and two, sort of how to work around those weaknesses. It's definitely worthwhile identifying what medium you're writing in. So if you're writing a letter, tell it you're writing a letter. An email, tell it you're writing an email, memo, a script, a grant application, because that's going to inform its tone. The kind of thing that we kind of intuitively know. I don't write a grant application the same way I write a letter or a phone script, but it won't know that unless you tell it. And consider uncertainty and error. It's just worth thinking about. It's not going to surface to you. I'm not really sure about this fact that I put in there, right? Check all of its citations. Always check all of the citations. Any fact that it's giving you, check it. It's worth checking. Another thing to think about is that these large language models aren't the only way that fundraisers are using AI. There are donor prospecting algorithms out there that will mine the internet for information about folks. And it's worth considering at an organizational level questions like, you don't have to, what I'm not trying to say is never use these things, but it's worth considering some questions like, do these people know that this information is out there? Do they know what information they have on you? If they knew, how would they feel about it? It's worth considering in terms of sort of aligning your AI use with your organization's mission, right? Certainly bringing in funds is promoting the mission of your organization, but I think it's important for sort of long-term sustainability, for worker morale, and for just sort of people feeling good about the work that they're doing, to make sure that your organization's AI use policies align with the mission of the organization.
And that is so consistent with what fundraisers have always known about their donor databases. So Bill, Karen, Jennifer, Mike, we're all donors, and the nonprofit has information about us, about things we've shared in our lives that we've been comfortable sharing, other information that might be available broadly on the internet, where we work and where we went to school and things, and also our donation history, from one year to the next. But nonprofits put policies into place on who gets to see that information. How is that information used? Not everybody necessarily, even if we have this open, transparent workplace, not everybody necessarily is going to have access to that donor database. I'm wondering, Karen, are there some similarities here with AI? Are there going to be some concerns that the information about donors suddenly is going to be fed into these large language models, and we may not have the donor privacy and donor anonymity that a lot of donors, in fact, most donors prefer?
That's a great point. It's definitely worth considering. I imagine that there will be plugins for these large language models with any really large software, right? Word is doing it. The program that I write my statistical code in is doing it. Copilot is the name of that one. Because they can offer, like we've talked about, really this sort of augment. They can really augment your ability to write quickly and your ability to do a good job. But you want to think about, check those terms of service. And if they are hard to read, and I don't think they're hard to read on accident, because it's kind of uncomfortable to imagine like, hey, all of the stuff that I'm writing is getting reused, and where is it being stored and how? So it's worth spending some time or finding an expert to spend some time to read those terms of service to really see, how is this data, where is it going? Is it staying within my organization? And if so, we might think that's fine. If it's going outside, that's really worth thinking about. Some of these donor prospecting models already do that are built into databases already do have some AI built into them that do things like net worth estimation, sort of anything that's projecting that isn't explicitly out there online about someone's values. You see this with political stuff too. That's what Cambridge Analytica was doing in a slightly less ethical way, hopefully. But it's worth thinking about some of your databases may already have some AI built into them.
And Karen, as we conclude, having things built in kind of leads to this broader point of, as a fundraiser, I'm raising towards my annual fund and aspiring towards major gifts. And maybe we have a campaign. We want to be doing planned gifts. Oh, there's that event. I got to get that grant proposal out the door. You know, the CEO and the board are giving me these, information on what they want next. And so this is the daily life of a fundraiser. And I'm like, oh, wow, now I got to spend time trying to figure out AI. Just what advice do you have for fundraisers, knowing that over time, things like this do get embedded into things we use every day? You already mentioned when our donor database does a wealth screen, guess what? That's a form of AI. When I get out my phone and say, how do I get to Liberty Station in San Diego? When I'm in the gas lamp district, my phone is using AI to help me find the best way to get to Liberty Station, where the fundraising school teaches, thanks to the San Diego Community Foundation. How much of this do I need to be on the front end, learning, mastering, beating myself up if I don't know it? How much of it is just going to get embedded? And I know I'm just asking you to guess. Nobody knows. But what advice do you have for fundraisers and what they need to be doing to keep up with this latest trend?
That is a really good point, and it is a tough aspect of living in 2024 in general. I think, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you think about it, in order to use this stuff ethically, because it changes so quickly and because, every day they can do something that they couldn't do yesterday, all along the sort of pipeline from the people who are collecting the data, building the model, managing the people who do those things, selling them, buying them, using them, everybody has some responsibility for just critically thinking about their task and how the model works. I don't think that putting all of that responsibility on the user, one, makes sense, because the user, we can't expect everyone to understand the technical aspects of how AI operates. Man, that just is not practical. Nor can they undo many of the decisions that have ethical impact that were made back when the thing was developed, right? Here are some things that I think, from a user perspective, and also this is somewhat from an organization perspective as well, that folks can look for. One of those is, like I said, the data use policies that'll be in the terms of service. Also think about what it's trained on. What kind of data was used to build that model? It may not be obvious and it may not be explicitly out there, but if you imagine, how would it know this stuff? What data is it using to make the kinds of predictions that it's making? For large language models, this is going to be text on the internet. So is there anything about text on the internet that might be relevant to whether it can write a good grant proposal? Well, one of those things is most of what it is going to be stuff that was written after, I don't know, in the last 20, 30 years, not 100 years ago, for example. So it doesn't have a total population. It has a subset. The bulk of the text on the internet is written by people who are somewhat tech savvy, probably. A lot more of it is in English than in other languages. These kinds of things, the sort of characteristics of the sample that are relevant, will be useful, especially the limitations. Another question to ask yourself is, what is the model claiming to do? Is it claiming to predict something, like the net worth of someone? Is it claiming to assess something? If I put in, hey, here's my grant proposal, what do you think of it? Is it good? Do you think it'll get funded? Things like that. Is it generating text like these large language models do? Is it classifying something? Making sure that you're not treating it like an oracle, but really understanding what specific question it's answering is going to help you use that answer wisely. And if it's doing something like prediction, think about explainability features. If the software has something in it that's telling you, how did I get to this result? How uncertain am I about this result? That's going to be something that'll be a lot more useful for you than something that just spits out, you know what, they got $1 million. I know that for, even if they don't say I know that for sure. If they give you an answer and don't give you some measure of uncertainty or error, it's going to be a little bit less useful for you. And then finally, talking to your organization about sort of what guidance they can give, not just you, but the rest of your team, so you're all on the same page, that can go really far. And that's an opportunity for them to bringing in outside experts so that we're not just relying on the expertise of every individual person to try to do their best, but we can bring in someone from to help align the policies, the AI use policies within the organization with the mission of that organization.
And so for fundraisers, we cannot be like that famous Newsweek article from the mid-1990s that said, hey, there are these new things, the personal computer and the internet, never going to happen, never really going to take off. True story, Newsweek magazine. And we also can't think it's this genie in a bottle, AI, that's going to solve all of our problems. Like anything else, how can this be a tool to help us connect with our donors, their philanthropic values, their philanthropic motivations, that moral imagination, if you will, that is intrinsic to who we are as people when we're acting philanthropically. And that's how AI can be utilized. We teach this at the Fundraising School. We have 2 courses now on AI and fundraising, in addition to 3 additional courses on digital fundraising. These are part of the 24 public courses that we offer in person and online in the United States and around the world. We can customize training just for your nonprofit, your association, your region, again, globally if necessary. We also have quarterly webinars, these weekly podcasts, and our knowledge is gathered in our textbook, Achieving Excellence in Fundraising, now out in the 5th edition. All of this information is available on our website at philanthropy.indianapolis.iu.edu/the fundraising school. I'm grateful to our guest today, Dr. Karen Boyd. What a fascinating, intriguing conversation that Karen led us through here on this important topic of artificial intelligence and fundraising, in a podcast produced by Mike Anthony and Jennifer Boffman. I'm Bill Stanczykiewicz, and now you are more fully informed on this first day from the Fundraising School.